where it is that they want to end up. There's this whole, and that's why we started off with, I don't know what I don't know. So just as you saw on that slide previous, that could start with types of institutions, four-year, private, liberal arts. Is it going to be a community college? Some of those things really come back to you. And so on this slide, you can see exactly what are some examples that can help lead you and guide you to your decision. So all throughout this presentation, you're going to realize that it's kind of in a sense of a timeline, how it all starts and where it all ends. So if you look at this slide, I like to say that a good way to find your college is if it's a good fit academically, socially, financially. And I also included campus in here. So if you look at these examples, academics, what does that mean? So one of the main reasons why you're getting a college education is for the academic side. So whatever it is that you want to be in the future, where do you see yourself? So some of those questions that you might ask about academics are, is my major offered? You know, that's one of the biggest things. You don't want to choose a school definitely on social activities. You're also there to earn a degree. So that's highly important. Things like internships and research opportunities. Are those things offered? Are those things that you want to see at the institution that you're going to be attending? As we move over to social, so this is really important. So you're there for academics, but it's also important that you get that stimulation outside of the classroom and making sure that you're making those connections with your community. So some of those questions that you might ask are things like, is there Greek life? Are there clubs and organizations that you're interested in? I know that at the time I was asked one time, does your school have inner tube water basketball? And actually we do, and I found that so fascinating. So clubs and organizations are also something that you can start. The beauty of college is if it's not offered, you can actually start that. As we look into things like the campus, this is really important. So things like residence halls and dining, I know that that was really big for me. Also, how far away from home is it? And, you know, I added this on here, it's kind of a chuckle, but is there grass? So I went to a school in the middle of the desert where it was xeriscape and there was no grass. And I remember after graduating, working for a college that had grass, and I was so fascinated because I hadn't seen it for 4 years. So those tiny things matter. So be sure to ask yourself, what is it that I'm looking to get out of my institution, academically, socially, and from the campus standpoint? But one of the most important components as well is, let's say all these things fit your criteria. Financially is the most important because you don't want to cause yourself more stress than needed. Sure, the campus may look beautiful and it has the academics that you want, but be sure that it's going to be cost affordable. So make sure that you look into different scholarship opportunities, as well as financial aid packages, and compare those among colleges. But really all of these things collectively and holistically are what are going to go into how you find that right college. So we just wanted to provide this with you. So now we can go to the next slide.
So how do I start my research, right? Step one, you're here. I mean, we could check that off the list, right? Next thing is making sure that you're organized. That's going to be one of the key things, is going to make sure that you are keeping yourself up to date on all the things you need to know, right? Have we narrowed down what we're looking in state, out of state? All right, I did that, got that done. Now I've got my top 5, maybe 6 schools. Now I'm going to create an email account that I'm going to be very proud of, and very proud to share with all of these admissions reps. And it's going to be something I'm going to check. So I'm going to make sure that if I don't have it on my phone, that maybe I have it so that the school's email account that they create for me, because I created a portal with them or some kind of account, that it forwards to that email that I created, because I know I'm checking that one. If you use a Gmail account, you can actually create yourself a drive. And in that drive, you can save all of the things in there. So that way they all live in one place and we're not going all over the computer trying to figure out where everything's at. It all lives in that college drive under that email account. And it's how I'm going to keep organized when it comes to dates, when it comes to deadlines. That financial aid advisor was amazing. I have her email account. I'm going to make sure I have that saved in there, and the last few things he or she told me to do. I'm going to attend online virtual college fairs. There's going to be a bunch in the fall. Be prepared. Keep those dates or in your drive as well, in your Google Calendar. So that way you don't miss anything. You register for them on time, just like you did for this event. You register, you're making sure you're here, you're making sure you're getting all the information. You're exploring all of those online resources. You're making sure that you have all the things you need at your disposal. You just sometimes have to say, I wonder if TWU has nursing. Then you go to our website, you look it up, oh, yep, they got nursing. And then you'll think about other schools and you'll think about, do they have this, do they have that? I'm gonna research that information. And now I need more specific information. So now I know I need to go and schedule a visit with a counselor or a college rep after doing some research. I wanna have that background knowledge so that way when I'm talking with them, if it's 30 minutes, that 30-minute meeting is going to give me everything I need. I have a list of questions, and never apologize for saying, I have so many questions. We love it. It's one of the harder things is when we're kind of trying to pull stuff out of you, like, well, how can I help you? When you have that list of questions, we are loving it because we are finding you all the information. And if we don't have the answer, we're going to find the person who does. So you are leading those meetings. You're going to use your school counselors. You're going to use those college representatives because that's what we're here for. We are happy to help you. We are happy to give you as much information as we can. We want you to come to our events, but we also want to make sure it's best college fit. So don't be nervous if you're like, well, I'm thinking about you and I'm thinking about another school. Like, that's okay. You should be thinking about a few schools. You want to make sure that you're making the decision that's best for you, and we want that too.
So after this process of trying to figure out and narrow down what type of colleges that you're looking for, again, with that academics, social activities, financial, as well as the campus life, then it's time to really buckle down and really think about what are those materials that that college is going to ask for, but more so, what am I looking at? What are the types of deadlines? And how is my application reviewed? These are really important before you start to gather those application materials, just so you understand what that timeline is going to look like. And so these are the things to consider when viewing those schools. The application review process. So does that school review automatically, or do they accept automatic applications, assured process, or holistic review? And so if you take a look at these, with the automatic admission, as an example, so this just means if you meet a certain criteria, you are admitted into that school no matter what. So example is if you're in the top 6%, automatic admissions. Some schools have assured admissions, and so this is kind of a mixture of criteria. So as you can see, it's based on maybe a mixture of top 25% as well as a minimum score. Another way that schools review applications are holistically. And so this is more of a collective scope of you as a student. So it looks at, as you can see, balances of experience, attributes, and academics. So these types of colleges typically review on a rolling basis, and you'll be able to see this a little bit later. But this is important because it's starting to build that time frame of what you're looking at in terms of decision time. So that's really important whenever you're looking at schools and before you start gathering information. Now, aside from that are the important deadlines. And so that's what you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. So early decision, and I have binding here because I think that's really important. So early decision means that if you get accepted to that school, that is where you are attending. Typically, this is for students that know absolutely University X is my #1 choice and I don't want to go anywhere else. Because, and I tell students, really think about this decision, and it's not to deter you from doing that, but this is a commitment. And so that's why I have binding there, because if you see early decision, you need to know that it comes with a heavier cost if your decision decides to change. So make sure that you are wanting to attend that institution. Next is early action. So typically this is going to be at the beginning of the fall semester, and maybe applications will be due around November. And we'll talk about the review process a little bit later throughout this presentation. But with these deadlines, we'll also discuss how they're reviewed. And typically, I think most offices say about 2 weeks to have a decision, but that's not always the case. So early action, have your application materials in around at least November or the beginning of the fall. The next is the priority deadline. So this typically is going to be at the start of winter, as well as rolling admissions. So with rolling admissions, typically colleges will review applications all throughout the year. So there are no hard deadlines. As applications come in, those colleges are going to be reading those applications all the time. So that way they're getting the scope of you as a student. So though these are things to consider, I know that one of the biggest things also is about college credit. So one thing that you may want to start thinking about is the dual credit courses. And so that's what we're going to talk about next.
Wouldn't let me unmute myself. Also, as a quick note for the application review, that automatic assured and might change from institution to institution. So automatic might be 10%, might be 25%, assured might be 25, 50%. So definitely check to see the websites of the schools that you're looking into. So when we're talking about the college credits, so yay for dual credit, yay for advanced placement, yay for IB. There's some things that we want to make you aware of, and that's making good choices. So you don't necessarily have to overload your schedule thinking, oh, colleges are going to want to see these dual credit courses. If you're doing dual credit, focus on core. You know, English, math, science, social studies courses. Leave the heavy hitters for us. We like to give you anatomy and physiology and all those like heavy hitter courses. So keep that in mind. You know, you don't necessarily have to overwhelm your schedule, because if you overwhelm your schedule, you might end up with maybe lower grades than you wanted. And you got to keep in mind those credits are coming with you. And then the question is usually like, will my credits transfer? So that's also something to look into the universities that you're looking into. So if it's a public institution, more likely, you know, they'll have articulation agreements, meaning they have agreements with those colleges where they'll take the credits. But if you took something that's really, really, really cool, but not a part of your degree plan, it might come over, but it might not be used for something. So just keep that in the back of your mind when we're thinking about those dual credit courses and those advanced placements. We want you to do excellent in them, and we're always super impressed when we see them, but always make the right choices when you're deciding on the courses. And your counselors can really give good feedback when it comes to that.
So in this timeline of the admissions process and finding the right college, after you've decided all that, now you really want to think about the application materials. And so that's what we have here. These are the things that you typically are going to need when applying to institutions. However, it's really important that you check each individual school's websites and definitely utilize those admission counselors so that way you get the most information that's needed. So if you take a look at application materials standard, because these are the typical things that you're going to have to apply, the basics. So the application. So the typical applications are through Apply Texas, the Common App, which Apply Texas is for schools in Texas. The Common Application is for schools all over the US. Some institutions also offer university-specific applications. And so that's what you'll typically find on that specific institution's website. And typically most of the time, they will also send email communication stating that they have a university-specific application. So that may not be something that you need to definitely look into, but you may get communication about that from the schools that you are looking for. And last is the Coalition app. Maybe not as common, but that's something that may also be required. With the application, there is typically an application fee. However, there is a fee waiver. Some institutions have app fees, some do not. But it's very important as you're starting to gather this information that you understand and know everything about the application process, and that fee waiver and the application fee are going to be super important so you know what you need whenever you submit your actual application. Transcripts, you'll also need your official transcripts. This process may look different just in the time that we're going through. So it's important to reach out to those colleges and just make sure. But official transcripts, as we just talked about dual credit and college courses, those will also have to be submitted at some point as well. And then that last bullet on the left, SAT or ACT scores, these are typically standard. However, I know there are a lot of institutions going test optional. So that's why I have maybe optional. So that's something to definitely look into. And you may have the option to do either or. So on the right-hand side, these are application materials that are going to be more college specific. The ones on the left are the basics that you'll typically see all throughout. But on the right, the first bullet we have are essays. So essays are not always required at every institution. And with this right-hand side, you may see not required, but preferred. I typically tell my students that the more materials that you can submit to get that overall picture of who you are as a student, the better. So we do offer test flexible at Drake, which you do not have to submit an essay or a test score, but if you can provide those things, it paints a better picture of you as a student. So essays may not be required, but they are preferred. Letters of recommendation are also the same. Um, some institutions may have an interview process, as well as if you're auditioning for maybe a music program or a music scholarship. So auditions may be a part of that application process as well. And then TSI scores, those are typically going to be for public institutions within the state of Texas, but that's definitely something to look out for. I attended a public institution within Texas, but I now work for a private institution that we do not require this, but it's extremely important for you to get this information from your admissions counselor of schools that you're considering. And then last, sorry, there's something else. There may be other specific app materials. So if you are applying to, let's say, the School of Pharmacy, College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, or law school, there may be separate application materials that you're going to need in order to get into that specific college. So those are definitely things to look out for as well. So I want to end on this slide just by saying, please reach out to your admissions counselors to make sure that you have all the application materials that are needed. And so that way you can go ahead and begin to build those throughout the fall.
All right, so we're going to need to just pick up the pace a little bit. We've got, I think, 7 more minutes. So now we'll touch on some financial aid.
So ways to pay for college. So financial aid is extremely important. So the most common application that you will see is the FAFSA, which stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. I encourage all students to apply for this. This is typically how colleges are going to award any sort of government aid as well as institutional at times. So even if you hear, man, maybe my friend didn't get anything or I was told not to do it, always complete the FAFSA if you can, because you don't want to count yourself out before you're done. And so some of those things include like a bus plan. So if you maybe don't intend taking out loans, but something happens throughout the fall or spring semester, if there's no FAFSA on file, there's no extra funds to help you. So I like to see FAFSA as a backup plan and really just a way to pay for college in general. Aside from that, there's other things like merit and academic scholarships. So some institutions, just on you applying, will award merit-based scholarships. And so that's something to definitely consider when you're looking at school options. Through the FAFSA, you will be eligible to receive grants, scholarships, loans, work study. And all of those things, there are representatives at each school that will go over these things with you more specifically. And this is really important to compare at other colleges. One of the important things on this slide too is the deadline, or I'm sorry, the opening date is October 1st. So get this in as soon as possible because this is going to help you understand your finances and what colleges you need to narrow out or keep.
And so a little bit more about financial aid. Also, there's the FAFSA, that's the federal aid, and then there's also TAFSA, which is if you're not eligible for the federal student aid, then you'll be able to apply for TAFSA. So there are different options. Also, I'm going to go on a little rant. It'll be a quick rant, less than usual, will be when it comes to loans. A lot of times, you know, we're a little bit hesitant about loans because we always have this negative feeling towards them, right? But our, you know, parents and older siblings, they don't have the advantage that we have right now in this room, right? That's going to be the fact that, well, my promissory note where I had to say which loans and things I was going to take lived in the file cabinet in my school. But yours lives on your phone. So you're able to access it with your smartphone anytime you want. So you're never going to be surprised after 4 years. How much money did I take out? Oh man, did I take out a whole lot? No, you can go in there and you can check it. So there's never going to be a surprise. Everybody in this room, all of us, are going to be fully aware of how much money we are borrowing. We're only borrowing what we need. We're not going to take out more than we need. And we're going to make sure that we are taking advantage of things that are going to be like grants that we're not paying back, but loans, we're going to make the right choices when we when we decide to take out those loans. So October 1, maybe don't go on that website because we all crash it October 1, but definitely those first 2 weeks in October, make sure you're doing the FAFSA, make sure you're filling it out, or the TAFSA.
So after you submit all of your application materials as well as your financial aid package, what does that kind of look like? And so that's one of the biggest questions whenever you're doing the admissions process or the application process. And so these are just some sort of helpful tips. So first you'll see give admission offices time. So just as we talked about those different application review processes, so assured, automatic, rolling admissions, or holistic review, um, those things take time. And so a lot of times students may think, oh, I submit my application, I'll have a decision tomorrow. Sometimes there are people that are involved. Well, a lot of times there are people involved in this. So give us time to read your application or to go through those processes. Next, during this process or during this time, ask questions. This is one of the most important things that you can take away from this slide, especially coming off of that financial aid slide. Don't just submit your application for admission or your financial aid application and just let it go. Be sure that you follow up. Now, that doesn't mean every second, every day. But make sure there aren't missing application materials and that you get all your questions answered, as well as attend university events. So this is really important. This is how you're going to understand what type of school that you want to be at. And is that dream school that you've always wanted? Do those events really coincide with what's inside of your heart? So attend those university events. We now know, at this time it's going to be a little bit weird because some are going to be virtual, but that means you have all these things at your fingertips. And I encourage all of you to do that in state or out of state. And I want to turn over to Melissa.
And just to echo that, making sure, kind of bringing it back to what we said at the beginning, keeping yourself organized is going to definitely help with this. Sometimes it can be a little bit daunting, the whole college process, and we can get a little stressed out about it. But when we're organized, it helps alleviate that stress. And so now if you're going to go contact the admissions office, you have all your information ready to go. So it's pretty much going to be probably a really quick question you might have because you have the next things ready to go. So keeping organized is definitely going to help with all of these next parts.
So I know that we just have a few short minutes, so I just kind of want to tie this all in together. This just shows the timeline of what this looks like from summer to fall to winter to spring. All of these things are very important, so I'm going to let you all glance at this. And what I want to add for the sake of time is that this may be overwhelming, and some of these things you're not going to know, and what to do during what time and what should I be looking out for. So our next slide is actually about what our job is and our role. And I want to tie this into this timeline. If there's any issues or any questions that you need answered, that is what Melissa and I and all these other admissions counselors that are here helping you today are here for. So please utilize us as resources. If it's comparing packages among schools, we don't mind doing that. If you're trying to decide which school to go to, we want to know that because we're going to be your biggest advocates at the end of the day. So get to know us because we want to get to know you. I want to turn it over to Melissa.
Yeah. And definitely when you're thinking of the timeline, that's another thing. We're going to have that calendar that we're going to put these dates in. I'm visiting the school virtually this date. I might be, hopefully things will get better soon and you get a chance to come and visit campuses. Put that on that calendar. Put it as a maybe. No, October 1, I already know I need to start doing those financial aid applications, FAFSA or TAFSA. I need to research those scholarships. Who am I going to contact for those letters of recommendation, right? Which counselor, which teacher, am I going to give them lots of time? There might be a deadline for maybe December for my scholarships from this school, but this other school can wait until March. So I don't want to do it right at the deadline, but I'm going to time them out pretty well. So I'm going to make sure that I'm giving my teachers enough time to write me great letters of rec. I'm giving myself enough time to, if I need to retake the ACT or SAT, that I give myself time for that, to prep for it. So again, get rid of all that stress by giving yourself all of the organization skills. And bringing it back to what we said at the beginning, I don't know what I don't know, and that's totally okay. And even this presentation was really short, it's 30 minutes. And there's so much more. We could talk for days about admissions because this is our thing. So definitely reach out to us, reach out to the counselors or the reps who are in the chat. All of us are here to help you.
Melissa and Jeremy, thank y'all so much for presenting today. Y'all really did make the strongest start to our whole summer series. Y'all made the strongest foundation. Y'all set a really high bar for the rest of the presenters. Students, participants, in the next couple minutes, you are going to be invited